Cinderella. There once lived a young woman named Cinderella, whose natural birth mother had died when Cinderella was but a child. A few years after, her father married a widow with two older daughters. Cinderella's mother of step treated her very cruelly, and her sisters of step made her work very hard, as if she were their own personal unpaid laborer. One day, an invitation arrived at their house. The prince was celebrating his exploitation of the dispossessed and marginalized peasantry by throwing a fancy dress ball. Cinderella's sisters of step were very excited to be invited to the palace. They began to plan the expensive clothes they would use to alter and enslave their natural body image to emulate an unrealistic standard of feminine beauty. It was especially unrealistic in their case, as if they were different with age enough to stop a clock. Her mother of step also planned to go to the ball, so Cinderella was working harder than a dog. An appropriate, if unfortunately, stepsis's metaphor. When the day of ball arrived, Cinderella helped her mother and sisters of step into their ball gowns. A formidable task, it was like trying to force 10 pounds of processed non-human animal carcasses into a 5-pound skin. Next came immense cosmetic augmentation, which it would be best not to describe at all. As evening fell, her mother and sisters of steps left Cinderella at home to finish her housework. Cinderella was sad, but she contented herself with her wholly new records. Suddenly there was a flash of light, and in front of Cinderella stood a man dressed in loose fitting, all cotton clothes, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. At first Cinderella thought he was southern lawyer or a band leader, but he soon put her straight. "Hello, Cinderella, I'm your fairy godperson, or individually deity proxy, if you prefer. So you want to go to the ball, eh? And bind yourself into a male concept of beauty? Squeeze into some tight-fitting dress that will cut off your circulation? Jam your feet into high-heeled shoes that will ruin your bone structure? Paint your face with chemicals and makeup that have been tested on non-human animals?" "Oh yes, definitely," she said in an instant. Her fairy godperson heaved a great sigh and decided to put off her political education till another day. With his magic, he enveloped her in a beautiful bright light and whisked her away to the palace. Many carriages were lined up to the outside the palace that night. Apparently, no one had ever thought of carpooling. Soon, in a heavy-gilded carriage, painfully pulled by a team of horse slaves, Cinderella arrived. She was dressed in a clinging gown woven of silk stolen from unsuspecting silkworms. Her hair was festooned with pearls plundered from hardworking, defenseless oysters, and on her feet, dangerous though it may seem, she wore slippers made of finely cut crystal. Every head in the ballroom turned as Cinderella entered. The men stared at the lusted after this woman who had captured perfectly their barbidal ideas of feminine desirability. The women, trained at an early age to despite their own bodies, looked at Cinderella with envy and spite. Cinderella's own mother and sister of step, consumed with jealousy, failed to recognize her. Cinderella soon caught the roving eye of the prince, who was busy discussing, jousting, and barbating with his cronies. Upon seeing her, the prince was struck with a fit of not being able to speak as well as the majority of population. "Here," he thought, "is a woman that I could make my princess and impregnate her with the progeny of her perfect genes, and thus make myself the envy of every other prince for miles around. And she's blonde too." The prince began to cross the ballroom towards his intended prey. His cronies also began to walk towards Cinderella, so did every other male in the ballroom who was younger than 70 and not serving drinks. Cinderella was proud of the commotion she was causing. She walked with the head high and carried herself like a woman of eminent social standing. But soon it became clear that commotion was turning into something ugly, or at least socially dysfunctional. The prince had made it clear to his friends that he was intent on possessing the young woman, but the princess resolute necessary angered his past for the two lusted after her and wanted to her own prey. The men began to shout and push each other. The prince's best friend, who was a large, if carefully constrained duke, stopped him halfway across to the dance floor and insisted that he was going to have Cinderella. The prince's response was a swift kick to groin, which left the duke temporarily inactive, but the prince was quickly seized by other sex-crazed male and he disappeared into a pile of human animals. The women were applied by this vicious display of testosterone, but tried as they might, they were unable to separate the combatants. To the other women, it seemed that Cinderella was the cause of all the trouble, so they encircled her and began to display very unsisterly hostility. She tried to escape, but her impractical glass slippers made it nearly impossible. Fortunately for her, none of the other women were shot any better. The noise grew so loud that no one heard the clock in the tower chime midnight when the bell rang the 12th time. Cinderella's beautiful gown and slippers disappeared, and she was dressed once again in her peasant rags. Her mother and sisters of step recognized her now, but keep quiet to avoid embarrassment. The woman grew silent at this magical transformation, freed from the confinements of her gown and slippers. Cinderella sighed and stretched her ribs. She smiled, closed her eyes, and said, "Come on now if you want, sisters, but at least I will die in comfort." The women around her again grew envious, but this time they took a different approach. Instead of exacting vengeance on her, they stripped off their bodies, corsets, shoes, and every other confining garment. They danced and jumped and stretched in sheer joy, comfortable at least in their shifts and bare feet. Had the men looked up from their macho dance of destruction, they would have seen many desirable women dressed as if for the boudoir, but they never ceased pounding, punching, kicking, and claving each other until to the last man they were dead. The women clacked their tongues but felt no remorse. The palace and realm were their now. Their first official act was to dress men in their discarded dresses and tell the media that the fight arose when someone threatened to expose the cross-dressing tendencies of the prince and his cronies. Their second was to set up a clothing coop that produced only comfortable, practical clothes for women. Then they hung a sign on the castle advertising cindirella, for that was what their new clothing was called, and through self-determination and clever marketing, they all, even the mother and the sister of stepped, lived happily ever after.